Are we f***ed? Is the market going to crash? Are we going to go through a boom? We've got a new government. What is going on? These are my 2025 property predictions. Hey, I'm Sam Watterson. I'm a property investor, a landlord, and the owner of multiple property businesses in Leeds. I've been in and around the property industry since 2006, and I have seen it all. We have had some massive changes in the UK in the last few months. After 14 years of having the Conservatives in charge, we now have a Labour government. We're already seeing massive changes with the farmers losing their inheritance tax rights. There's going to be more changes. Things are really going to shift in 2025. So let's get into it. And I think the first thing that we need to talk about, and the biggest thing that people consider, is interest rates. Towards the end of 2022, after having some historic lows, interest rates went back up to levels we'd not seen for almost 10 years. Now, since then, people have found it really hard to get new mortgages, to refinance properties, and a lot of property deals just haven't worked. The Bank of England have recently said, because inflation is now under control, they expect to aggressively start reducing interest rates early in 2025. We have already seen reductions at the last few meetings of the Bank of England, so we would expect those interest rate drops to continue into 2025. And one of the governors of the Bank of England has even come out and said they want to be super aggressive on this. I predict interest rates will get as low as 3.5% by the end of 2025, if not early 2026. So what does that mean for you? It means cheaper borrowing, so it means the availability of funds means you can get into more deals, more opportunities. Are lower interest rates good or bad for the market? So you need to look at this from both sides. With low interest rates, it means the access to cash is more available, which means more people can buy properties. The more people that buy properties, the supply and demand balance tips in the favor of demand and not supply. And then what that does is that forces prices up. So you might find that borrowing will be cheaper, but it becomes harder to buy properties as more people flood the market. With higher interest rates, although it costs more to get into each property deal, what you find is it scares off a lot of amateur people, so you might be in a position to pick up deals because houses are not selling. So if you're someone who sat there and you've got a fixed term deal coming to the end fairly soon, my advice would be to speak to your broker, because sometimes the lenders will preempt the reductions in the interest rates and will start to compete with each other. So you may already start to see even better deals out there through a really good broker. Now, think about your personal situation. Are you in a position where you could go onto the standard variable rate for a few months, ride it out and wait for the low interest rates? Or is that going to make your deal not cash flow? Is it going to put you underwater? It might be worth going on to a 2-year fixed deal, letting these interest rates phase out and then refinancing again in 2 years onto a much lower rate. So have a look at the market, look at what the industry is saying, speak to the brokers, speak to the lenders, keep an eye on what the rates are, and then decide whether you want to go in for a short-term or a long-term fixed. So the second thing that I'm going to predict in the property market for 2025, in the recent budget, the Labour government have increased the stamp duty for a second home purchase from 3% to 5%. Now, not a lot of noise has been made about this because everybody has been talking about the farmers' inheritance tax. But I think secretly, behind the scenes, a lot of buy-to-let investors are suddenly going to be priced out of the market, because to buy a £150,000 property means a stamp duty bill of £7,500 on top of the deposit, on top of the legal fees, on top of any works that needs to be refurbed before the property can go on the market. Now, this won't affect the people that are happy to buy in areas with long-term growth potential where they're going to keep the properties for 10, 15 years. But for those people that like the fluidity of owning a property for a few years and then being able to sell and realise their investment to do something else, all of a sudden that property needs to go up by £7,500 just to catch up with the stamp duty they paid at the start. So I think the stamp duty could be a ticking time bomb for the buy-to-let market, which could either send it into a crash or a crisis, or it could create loads of opportunities for professional and savvy investors to put in offers and get deals accepted at lower rates than when the market is really, really hot. And that leads me nicely into my prediction for number 3. So before I move on to the next prediction, I've got a gift for you. If you're watching this and thinking, I want to get started in property and take advantage of all the opportunities in 2025, click on the link in the description of this video and you'll be able to download a free guide to getting started in property right now. It'll be packed full of information and tips for you to get started right now, and I look forward to seeing you one day in a video like this talking about your successes and looking at the properties and the projects that you're doing. Okay, property prediction number 3 for 2025. Following hot on the heels of stamp duty, it's a different way to buy properties. So if you've got to factor in a 5% stamp duty, this is going to lead to a lot more buyers going to the vendors and saying, look, I want to buy your property, I'm happy with the price, but the stamp duty is killing me, so I'm going to have to reduce my price. Or we could do a deal where you pay the stamp duty and I can roll up some of that cost into the borrowing costs, so reducing my upfront costs. So I think there's going to be a lot more negotiation between buyers and sellers to factor in creative ways of accommodating these increases in stamp duty. I think you're going to see a lot more assisted sales where people can take control of the property without taking ownership of the property. And this means they're not having to put in big deposits. They're not having to pay stamp duty at the start. So I would say you're going to see the end of flipping properties as we know it and the rise of the assisted sale. So if you want to learn more about the assisted sale, put something in the comments below and let's start a discussion. Property prediction number 4. Now, all those amateur investors, all those part-time landlords who don't know the creative strategies, they're probably going to be spooked by this increase in stamp duty. And what that's going to do is that's going to reduce the number of buyers from the market and cool the market down. Will that lead to an all-out crash? I don't know. In my area, they've been predicting crashes every day since the Brexit decision, COVID. There was always going to be a crash, but the market just kept on going. But my market where I am is different to markets in other areas. So I predict that there could be crashes in areas close to you or in other areas where the market just cools. And this will create lots of opportunities where we can put in offers to motivated sellers who unfortunately, because of what's happening, will have to offer less than they might have achieved if they'd sold their property 2-3 years ago just after COVID. So keep an eye out for the market cooling in your area. Keep an eye out for properties staying on the market longer than they should, coming back on the market. Speak to the agents. Are they having any properties that are struggling to sell? And don't be scared to put in those cheeky offers, those below market value offers, and present creative ways of acquiring properties, because a cooling market creates advantages for investors just like you. Property prediction number 5. And this goes back to the new Labour government. They seem to be on a mission to tax everybody with any aspiration out of their dreams. VAT on private school fares, increases to national insurance, increases to basic income tax, inheritance tax. They are basically going after the middle classes. So what does this mean? This means the aspirational people who are going to set up businesses, who are going to be self-employed, are probably thinking differently about how they want to earn their living. And what does that mean for you in the property world? Well, you know, all those towns with shops and retail units, they're just going to sit empty. Who in their right mind, with things the way they are now, will go and take the lease out on a commercial property? So the opportunity for us is commercial to residential opportunities. I was looking at a dentist the other day that sat empty. It is just not worth somebody taking the contract on that building because there's not enough money in dentistry in that area. They're better off taking their practice and putting it in an affluent area. But that property is in a prime location for residential use. So that would make a fantastic commercial to residential conversion opportunity. So property prediction number 5 is the prevalence of commercial to residential opportunities as more and more commercial properties, shops, buildings sit empty while businesses are struggling to grow under this new Labour regime. Okay, so what am I going to be doing in 2025? I'm going to be continuing to be aggressively looking for HMO conversions in Leeds. But historically, where I've looked for residential to residential conversions, I'm now going to shift my searching to looking for commercial to HMO residential opportunities. So I'm going to be going aggressively looking for bigger HMO opportunities in my area, as well as looking for creative deals, assisted sales, lease options, where I can take control of properties, but not the ownership, and add the value through the refurb using all the skills that I've built up over my years of experience in the property industry. So those are my predictions, but what are you thinking? Where do you think the market's going to go? Do you think there's going to be a crash? Why don't you comment below? Let's get a discussion going and let's hear what you guys have got to say about the health of the 2025 property market. And if you haven't already, remember, click the description to the video, download the free guide to getting started in property, subscribe to this channel. I'm Sam Watterson and I'll see you in the next video.